Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Govardhan, we could use a little volume. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari. Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari. Jasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamunitira Banachari. Jamunitira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari. Jasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamunitira Banachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Boom. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Priya Jagacharya Siddhadeshesham, His Divine Grace Abhayacharan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Jagaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Kota Vaishya Brinda Ki. Namchar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Brinda Ki. Say Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mathura Dham Ki. Dwarka Dham Ki. Navadip Dham Ki. Jagannath-puri Dham Ki. Jamuna Maya Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Tulsi Maharani Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Samveda Bhakti Vinda Ki. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Say Sri Radha Giridhari Ki. Shri Krishna Sankirtana Jaga Ki. Gopremanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Buddha's feet of Shishi, Guru, and Gauranga. Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Dhammaganadi Bisaha Kalada Sadashamesha Puranarko Nadodita Narayana Namaskritchandaram Chaivam Narottama Devim Sarsatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. The Bhagavatam was Brinda's son. Is written just after the departure of Lord Krishna. It was on a boat accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision through the dense darkness of the age of Kali shall get light out of this Purana. I don't see this ending well, but before beginning our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, we should first offer respects to the personality of God Narayan, the Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, and the author Srila Vyasadeva, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're on the 5th canto, chapter 15, and I believe, I need a Bhagavatam. Because, if you don't, I could have gotten here actually, but we're on verse 5 and 6 is what we're going to do today. Maybe 7, we'll see how it goes. So we're going to, Dravida Prabhu? I'm sure you are. Thanks a lot, Prabhu. Hey, just hang on. So just do that's all there is anyway. We're not going to do the word for word because there's a lot, if that's all right. So we'll just, Dravida Prabhu will lead us in the Sanskrit. You want to do word by word in the Sanskrit? No.
Okay, I'll just skip it. Yeah, I'll just write it.
And then I'll read the translation, and then we can do the same for verse 6. Is that okay?
Fine.
Take it away.
Patihat subhachalayam patihotradayas tvayasan idya kovidaha sunavaha patihatuhu stutyam ajabhumanav ajanishatam. That was 5.
Yeah, no. In the womb of his wife, Suvarchala, Pratiha begot 3 sons, named Pratihata, Prastota, and Udgata. These 3 sons were expert in performing Vedic rituals. Pratiharta begot 2 sons named Aja and Bhuma, in the womb of his wife named Stuti.
Okay, 6. Bhumna rishikulyayam udgitas tata prastavo Devakulyayam prastavan yutsayam vidiyaja asid vibho ratyam cha pitushenas tasman nakta akutyam jagye naktad tutaputro gayo rajashi pravada udara shava ajayata sakshad bhagavato vishnu jagad virikshasya grihita sattvasya kalatmatvadi lakshanena mahapurusatam praptaha.
To save my voice, that's one. To save my voice, do you mind reading the translation?
Not at all. In the womb of his wife, Rishikulya, King Bhuma begot a son named Udgita. From Udgita's wife, Devakulya, a son named Prastava was born. And Prastava begot a son named Vibhu through his wife Niyutsa. In the womb of his wife Rati, Vibhu begot a son named Pitushena. Pitushena begot a son named Nakta in the womb of his wife named Akuti. Nakta's wife was Druti, and from her womb the great king Gaya was born. Gaya was very famous and pious. He was the best of saintly kings. Lord Vishnu and his expansions, who are meant to protect the universe, are always situated in the transcendental mode of goodness, known as Vishuddha Sattva. Being in the direct expansion of Lord Vishnu, King Gaya was also situated in the Vishuddha Sattva. Because of this, Maharaj Gaya was fully equipped with transcendental knowledge. Therefore, he was called Mahapurush. Go on.
No. Omaganatam randasya ganagana salakaya jakshushamilatan tazari shigurave namaha. In the purport, from this verse it appears that the incarnations of God are various. Some are part, Prabhupada points out that God can only have one son. He can only come in one form. You know, the man is known as a judge in his job, you know, and to his friends he's known as Paul or Charlie or whatever. And his wife may have some pet name for him, his kids are called. So even one individual has so many different forms. All of us have so many different, you know, ways that we express ourselves or manifest ourselves. And God is just locked into being an old man with a beard, throwing thunderbolts and not in a very happy mood. I mean, how is that a deep understanding? Okay, sorry about that. Some are part and parcel of the direct expansions, and some are direct expansions of Lord Vishnu. A direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Amsa, or Svamsa, wherein an incarnation from an Amsa is called a Kala. Among the Kalas, there are Vivinasam, Jivas, or living entities, Shaktavas or avatars he's talking about. These are counted amongst the Jiva Tattvas. Those who come directly from Lord Vishnu are called Vishnu Tattva and are sometimes designated as Mahapurusha. Another name for Krishna is Mahapurusha, and a devotee is sometimes called Mahapurushika. I don't know how this is going to work, Mataji. That's 2. 3 is coming. Be ready. What can you do? It's not possible. The kids are by nature energetic. So it's like torture for them. So why don't you try hanging? Could we open that door and she can hear class? And hang out in the lobby, because this is not going to... No, it's cold and wet. Just work with us. Just hang out there. It'll be much more fun. Because otherwise the kids, they become adverse to Bhagavatam. It's like torture to them. Yeah, I'm telling you, that's how it works. Okay. Thank you, Mataji, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience. So, we'll see you soon, kids. Breakfast is in a few minutes. Think of why all this list of names? Dravida Prabhu and I were talking about this on the way home in the car. All right, you do your best. I'll try to be tolerant and stay focused. Why? And there's a couple of reasons that I'm going to mention, and I'm sure there's more. One of them, well, I guess I'll say this one first. The Bhagavatam is called the Mahaparana. It's one of the Bhagavad Purana, and it is one of the Puranas or histories. And therefore, according to Dravida Prabhu, who heard from Gopi Pranada, who's an irreputable source, that one of the qualifications of a Purana is it describes the history of the place, of the universe. So these names, the Bhagavata, and I think, I'm trying to think of where it is, maybe it's in the 12th canto, but it gives the list of kings. It ultimately comes all the way down to Kali Yuga, which is I think the last one is actually about 5,000 years ago, and there's some record of him. So the Bhagavatam is an accurate history of the universe, the universe we live in. So it's another thing is, and these things are far out. If you go to Natwar, which is Srinathji, which is the original Gopal deity mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhavendra Puri's Gopal is now in Natwar, and they call him Srinathji. They have cows there that are famous for giving high-quality milk, not in volume, but in butterfat. They're very rich. And they have one room across the whole wall. They trace those cows all the way back 5,000 years to Mother Yasoda's cows. Because Mother Yasoda was trying to cure Krishna from his stealing propensity. And she thought, well, if she gets the best milk and they had special grass, that fed the cows, and then that with the sweets will be so nice, the yogurt, that it'll cure Krishna of this stealing proclivity. Of course, that didn't work out, and therefore we have the wonderful Damodar Leela. But they trace the lineage of the cows. So the point I'm trying to get to is that we live this universe, and every universe, the creation of the Lord, is like a gigantic machine. Picture, just a cosmic clock with all the wheels and gears and, spinning, all of it operating like a giant watch. And one thing is, you listed all this long, long list of names. Who are we? We're going to swim against the tide of the organization of the universe. That we just like a queen bee. She's called a queen. Isn't there an ant also have a queen? They have a king, or they're both matriarchs? All right, so yeah, said the brahmachari. And she may be the master of her hive, or what do they call it? Ants underground, whatever it is there. They have a name, but whatever it is. Colony, that's what they call it. They call it a colony. So, or nest. But is that queen significant to us? It's insignificant. How long does a queen bee live? They don't live too long, I don't think. So, you just sweep them up. So who are we? When we get a scope, it's the idea is to give you a picture of the scope of the thing. That there's this whole line of great kings who did amazing things, and we're just this little, tiny little, insignificant, not to invest one with a sense of insignificant creatureliness. But, who are we? And we're going to, like Banasura, who tried to, beat back the waves, we're going to beat back the little insignificant jiva. Badrinarayan Swami is going to rewire the way the universe works. I was just listening to a tape this morning, and Prabhupada was giving the example of one example of how wherever there's design, symmetry, interdependent systems, there's what is it? What is that? Just like Prabhupada says, law means what? Has to be a lawmaker. Design means there has to be a designer. And if there's a designer, then akin to that, or a byproduct of that, is that there's a purpose. Designer, they have an industrial design. They had, what are those blow dryers, for hair, So they were only selling them to women. It's a true story, industrial design. And they were flummoxed because, we're missing half the market. If we could get the men into this. But the men, it was like effeminate. They weren't going to, they were pink and they had, flowers on. They're not going to be out there blow drying their hair. So you know what they did? They gave them a handle like power tools. And when they gave it a handle like a power, and they came out in black and they came out in red. Sing! Shot through the roof. So how do we exactly get off on that? But there was a purpose. The design served a purpose. Similarly, there's a design to this creation. Prabhupada gives the example of the ice. He gives the example of how, and you see those water tanks. When you go in, especially out in the burbs or whatever, the suburbs, up on a big hill, there's a water tank. You ever seen those things? And if it's flat ground, they put it up on something, isn't it? It's called gravity feed. Then everything comes down by gravity feed, So Prabhupada says, it's a pretty far out example, that you see that just like they're stocking that water for when they need it, right? It's stocked for when it's needed. When things are going smoothly, properly, when people are dharmic, all the water is stored on the mountains. And it's frozen, glaciers, snow, and therefore it doesn't all just flood out and blow everybody out. It comes at time delayed, whatever, I don't know what the right word is, impulses or whatever, infusions. It's coming. It's perfectly managed. And another one of Prabhupada's classic examples is Purnam. He's talking about Om Purnamada Purnamidam, that everything's perfectly balanced because it's coming from the Supreme Perfect, Krishna. And he says the sun is shining on the ocean, right? And it draws up the water. Prabhupada asked, why is there salt in the ocean? It acts as a preservative, and it also controls the evaporation rate. It's pretty far out, huh? I mean, the more they get into it, the more everything is interwoven, interknit, interdependent, and just, how did that happen? Without, all by chance. So, sun draws it off, and it forms clouds. And the clouds are very easy to move. That little vayu comes along, gives it a little poof, and off it goes. Billions with a B. Probably trillions, but let's be safe. Billions of tons of water are floating in the sky. If I could float this, he's Bhagavan, But what about the real Bhagavan, who's floating billions of tons in the sky and just moving them at his will? And where do they go? They catch up on the mountains. Isn't it there's always, like here, if you go on the western side of those, what is it, Sierra Madre? What are those mountains called out there? There's a Santa Monica, but the big ones. It's green with trees. What happens when you're on the other side? Welcome to Yuma, Arizona. There's humans and there's humans. It's all desert, So because the water catches on I think it's even called the watershed. I forget, there's a name for it, but where it catches. And when it washes, when it comes out of the mountains, what does it do? Brings all the soil, all the minerals, all the nutrients, and it waters and feeds the fertile, fruited plain. It all becomes watered and fertilized. And what happens? Because there's the people living by the riverbank, and there's sewage, there's waste. It takes it all in the river, and it deposits it in the bottom of the ocean where it sinks at the bottom. It's a perfect free energy machine, and it's just running on perfectly by the arrangement of Krishna. If you look at time, what is it in the Bhagavatam? It's described as a hex atom that if you're lying on your bed, waking up from a nap or whatever, and the sun is shining through the beam of sun, those little particles that float up, that's what's, and they even have subparticles of that, because a hex is 8 or 6? 6. So it's even broken down 6 degrees from that. And it's called time calculation from the atom. It's Kapila Dev? Where's time calculation? So I know it was in the 3rd canto. Anyway, but the point is that, and that expands. They have, there's a danda, and there's a muhurta. There's all kinds of divisions. One of them is there's a pot that can hold a certain amount of water. There's a hole in it in a particular size, and the time that it takes the water to drain out of that pot, that's a measurement of time. Like a cubit, I think, used to be from the tip of the king's to his elbow or something like that. Yeah. So there's all kinds of measurements. So the time calculation starts all the way from an atom, or hexatom, in the Bhagavatam. It goes all the way to 1 exhalation of Mahavishnu. Everything's manifest, and then he inhales. So everything in between, inconceivable what the time span of, but it's just 1 exhalation of Mahavishnu. So picture for a moment the whole thing is just working like a clock. Tick, 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 tick. It's all balanced. It's all working perfectly. And Krishna says a number of things, but one of the things he says, that my material nature is very strong. We can't conquer it. We can't harness nature. Who I was talking to, but Mukunda Maharaj told me one time that Prabhupada went to see the the Indian consulate general, it's still there. It's in San Francisco. So they went to see Prabhupada was trying to get visas for devotees to go to India or something. So at 15th floor, they were on the 15th floor of a 24-story building, and there was an earthquake. San Francisco kind of prone to those. And it started, they're made to flex. If those buildings don't flex, then they break. So they're actually designed to flex. So they started to sway a little bit. And Prabhupada, raised his eyebrows, and the Indian consulate general says, no, don't worry, the building is earthquake-proof. And because Prabhupada is a perfect gentleman and had a purpose, Prabhupada didn't quarrel with the guy, just, went on with his, trying to woo him to help get devotees get visas. But Mukunda Maharaj said as soon as they walked out the front door, Prabhupada turned to him and said, no building is earthquake-proof. If Krishna comes with his earthquake boots, he can kick that. I was on a morning walk with Prabhupada in Chicago, and there was a Lakeshore Park that goes along I think it's Lake Michigan, but the temple was up in Evanston, which is north, and you could sight down the lake. It's pretty far. It was a pretty, Prabhupada liked the park, but you could look down because the lake is on this side and houses are on this side, and there was a beautiful park and a pathway, so Prabhupada was walking. And when you get out of the car, where Prabhupada starts walking, you look down the lake, you can see Chicago. There's that, is it Sandberg, that poet, the stacker of wheat, the shoulders of the, so, it's famous. It's the second city, it's the working man's city, Chicago, And it's got this skyline. And Prabhupada just looked at it. And Prabhupada said, they're very proud of stacking stones. He said, and Maya will come and simply kick them all down. Just like little kids, they do the little Lego toy, and somebody can just kick it down, or a sand castle, So they're not harnessing material nature. They're not conquering material nature. The guy over here at the tire shop who said, what are you, talking to us, hey, what are you doing, buddy? Nah, not much. What are you doing? Nah, I'm just killing time. And I pointed out to them, no, you're not killing time. Time's killing you. Time's just fine. It's not nicked or scraped or bent by you. We have to bow down. Time I am, the destroyer of all things. So the point is that there is a purpose. Look at human society. There's varnas and there's ashram. For the individual, what is it? To everything, everything there is a season. I think that's from Psalm. Is it from Psalms? It's from the Bible. Maybe Ecclesiastes. I don't know, but it's more hopeful than Ecclesiastes. So, to everything there is a season. Okay, there's a stage in life when you're a student, when you're a child, you can be a goofy kid and get away with stuff. And there's a time that, well, now you got to buckle down. You want to get married, you got to raise a family, you got to be responsible. And then there's a time like, if you got to detox from the household life. That's Varnaprastha. And then everyone's supposed to take sannyas. At the end of life, you're supposed to take sannyas. That's the Vedic system. Don't shoot me. I'm just quoting Shastra. So for the individual, there's the right time, right place, right circumstance to get one out of the material. There's a system. How does society work? There's varnas and there's ashrams. So in the varnas, and it all fits together like a machine. It's not that the Brahmins are exploited. The higher you go, if we're going to use a directional analogy, the higher you go, the more you're supposed to be renounced. Yeah, you want to be a Brahmin? Okay, fine. You're supposed to, what is the 6 duties of a Brahmin? You're supposed to be expert at all those things. You're supposed to be steeped in Shastra. You're supposed to teach. You're supposed to be renounced. You're supposed to be able to guide people in juggas. And you're supposed to live in a simple cottage in the forest. That's how it's designed. So it's not that, and the king, I was thinking about it yesterday. There's Maharaj Sibhi. And Maharaj Sibhi was famous for he was like a father, just like in this beginning in this verse and the future verses, it's going to describe the qualities of these kings. In Jaipur, when the Brits came in, what the Brits did, we're a little off the track, but we'll get to a point. The Brits, their whole idea was part of their idea was they polluted the kings, the Kshatriyas. And they said, listen, it's called Pax Britannia. We'll go in, and all this fighting with the different Kshatriya kings and all this stuff, and you got to maintain an army, and you got to worry about the Rajput kings who are always fighting with each other. Look, we'll take care of all your external, what do they call it? Your political affairs. You can run your state as you like. You take care of taxes and administration and all that. We'll take care of the externals, and we'll give you a, what is it called? Purse. This princely purse. We'll give you an allowance. So they had money, they had taxes, and they just became sense enjoyers. They became weak, ineffectual, and they had to pay a tax. So and gradually, they just became fat, lazy. They had so many girls. The line of inheritance in India was it had to go to a man. Therefore, to be a king, you had to be a man. We're not against men or women. Don't send me an email about that. That's not what we're talking about. But they had a whole string in Jaipur that they only had girls. When they finally had a boy, it's described that they served so much champagne and got so drunk, the nickname for the kid was Bubbles from all the champagne. And Prabhupada tells the story about it was in the Nawab in Hyderabad, that the servant, it was a huge crystal chandelier, and the servant was polishing each, dusting each, and one of the crystals fell on the floor. Now those things, I don't know how much it is, but each of those crystals is a couple $100, easy. So the Nawab was in the other room and heard what happened. And he came out, and the servants, he could cut his head off, send him off to who knows where. So I'm so sorry. I just did what? He said, what was that sound? He said, I was cleaning one of the crystals. He said, drop another, because he liked the sound. And he had him just drop the crystals just to hear the sound. You know, so much waste and self-indulgence. They just became weak and couldn't do anything. And the Brits just ran the place. I mean, that's a simple history. But the point is that the king was actually not meant to be a sense enjoyer. He was meant to be a servant. So back to Maharaj Sibi. Maharaj Sibi was famous for his protection for the citizens. He was famous for it. So Agni and Indra, to test him, I don't remember which was, but let's say Agni. Agni took the form of an eagle, and Indra took the form of a pigeon. And they flew into his kingdom. They flew into his palace. They had the big audience hall. And the pigeon landed on the king's lap. Said, please save me, save me. Oh, what could he do? The eagle said, hey, that's my pound of I'm entitled to that. That's what I eat. I'm a carnivore. That's my pigeon. Hand him over. Maharaj Sibi said, what can I do? He's taking shelter of me. I can't, you know. So they discussed all the different dharmic principles, you know, mundane dharmic principles. And the conclusion was that Maharaj Sibi had to give an equal amount of flesh to the pigeon. I mean, whatever the pigeon weighed, he had to give the eagle. And the eagle said, it has to be your flesh. You've deprived me. I want I want a pigeon's weight of your flesh. And Maharaj Sibi was just about to do it. An insignificant pigeon had taken shelter of him. He was going to practically sacrifice his life. But then, of course, you know, they turned into Agni, he turned into Indra, and he was showered with flowers and recognized to this day as an exemplar. Even Prabhupada says, I don't know how, but within the last 200 years, the king of Nepal, I mean, now they're just complete debauchees, and it's just a disaster. But the king of Nepal in Kathmandu, which was the capital, had a tower. And he had a man every day, could have been a woman, but every day someone climbed to the top of that tower and looked out with binoculars and, you know, a telescope and scanned the whole city. What was he looking for? Any house that didn't have smoke coming out of it in the morning. Because it meant they're not cooking. So why aren't they cooking? Everybody's cooking breakfast. So why aren't they cooking breakfast? Either they don't have enough to cook, or they're sick, something's wrong. So then they sent out agents to every house, any house that they saw no smoke, and took care of the problem. Oh, you need money, someone's sick, whatever. And only when they reported back to the king, everyone's eating in your kingdom, then he would eat his meals. He would not take his meals. That's a king. So if everybody's doing, the point is, and Krishna says, you know, be thou happy by this jaga, in Bhagavad Gita. I'm paraphrasing. But when the whole, what happens? I have well, there it is. In my kitchen, of course it's Krishna's kitchen, it's the apartment I'm staying in, there's a ceiling fan, right? And the way it's designed is if you open the cupboards, it bangs into the ceiling fan, right? I mean, who was the genius who put that thing in? But be it as it may, you know, and I'm not used to having the fan on. So it was, you know, in this last summer, you had some days that were very hot. So Bonzo the chimp here, I turned on the fan. I'm getting ready to cook. I reached to get some spice. I opened the closet. Bang! It hit the thing, right? So one of the blades was a little off kilter. But, you know, I eyeballed it and lined it and figured, well, that solves that. I turned on the fan and, you know, because it was a little off center, when it got going, the whole thing started shaking. It was going to fly right off the ceiling. Oh my God, that's how I'll go. Stabbed by a ceiling fan, you know. Talk about an inglorious departure. So, you know, there it is. So it was just off a little bit and it was wobbling. So if we understand, it all fits together like a machine. You got a machine, a screw loose. You know how the things start, you know? It's wobbling, it's making a noise. I dropped a penny down the garbage disposal. I mean, we could give a whole class in examples of my idiocy. But I dropped a penny, it fell into the garbage disposal. What happens when you turn that garbage disposal on? I mean, the whole thing was like, you know, I had to spend a half hour in there trying to find the thing, and oh, geez, you know. So, but the little tiny thing and the whole system blows out. And so people say, oh, we're going to conquer nature. No, you're not. We're completely subordinate to it, all the way from the breathing of Mahavishnu to a tiny little hex atom. The whole thing's completely controlled. And when we read these whole this lineage, it gives us a sense of our place in the universe. And it gives us a sense that there's order and there's purpose. So then if I get with the program, if you just get with the program, and you'll be happy, and everything will work in abundance. But I was in the Bhagavatam, I read it, or I was listening to something. But Prabhupada talks about, and there's certain astrological arrangements, when it rains, and the rain falls on the head of a snake, I don't know if it's a particular type of snake, but it creates jewels. You ever heard that one, Ron? You know the type of snake? Rain falls on the... Oh, I'm surprised. Ram usually knows. So, it is so far beyond our understanding. They used to think, okay, we'll wrap up. They used to think that, and this is one of the bases of survival of the fittest, natural selection, evolution. They thought that a cell was more or less like a Ziploc bag with a little saline, a little salts, water and some salt and maybe some amino acids floating around, and they thought it was a very, very simple structure. And therefore they thought, it's easy for it to mutate and mutate and mutate and mutate because it's such a simple structure. It's easy to do. Now, the average cell, paramecium, single cell, amoeba, or even a single, whatever, it's more complicated than New York City. All the, electrical system, sewer system, what is it, what do they call that, the transit system. There's so many, how's the whole thing work? Subway system, so many things. And that's not running so well. So the point is that, you read Origins magazine. So, there's, to make a simple change in that cell, a whole other series of things have to happen in sequence and in the right timed sequence. The idea that just happened I can't go into this sound system and just pull out a wire. And it's going to all of a sudden turn into a microwave oven. It just doesn't work. That's a simple example. But the point I'm trying to make is that when we understand that this existence, this creation, is finely tuned, perfectly balanced. And if we're off kilter, we're not going to be happy. We're going to be like that fan, and it's just waiting till the thing flies off, goes off the rails. And if we get in sync with Dharma, which means occupational duty, Prabhupada often describes, if we just do our duty as sacrifice for Vishnu, the whole thing works perfectly. People we're talking about this king's opulence. Prabhupada says, what is opulence? They have silk, they have cows, they have ghee, they have food. What have I forgotten? Jewels, gold. That's opulence. Prabhupada said their opulence is glass and plastic. I was in the grocery store the other day, and I was in Michigan, which is famous for growing apples. And I was in Michigan in the 70s, at our little temple in Detroit and in Ann Arbor. And there was a guy there with his wife, and he was looking at the apples, because they pick all the fruit green and ship it from New Zealand or wherever it is, And he was looking at it, and he said to his wife, he said, when I was a kid, I grew up in Michigan. He said, we wouldn't give these apples away. It'd be an offense if you gave somebody a green apple, And I said, hey, man, I remember that. I remember, So if we just work with the system, there's real opulence. And that's the opening of this chapter, is to give that significance. So we can end there. Anybody have any question? Not all at once now. All right, Prabhu, we can end. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.